I must admit that I'm a bit hungry right now. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Hunger is a delicious motivator. The way that we feel it, the way that this basic need for survival coerces us to seek fulfillment immediately in order to satisfy our appetites. Of course, I'm currently talking about physiological hunger, the hunger for edible nourishment that the hypothalamus demands before signaling to our bodies that we are full. But how do you know when you're actually full? While perusing a couple of popular magazines, the titles of some articles jumped out at me as if getting in my face and refusing to move like an annoying bully. They were 7 reasons why you're still hungry even after you just ate. 8 ways to tame a raging appetite, and my favorite, 10 ways to control your cravings. I must admit that one is my favorite because this hunger that so many people are fighting, these cravings that so many of us are having, cannot be curbed with food. Hunger should be perceived as more of a motive force rather than a mere annoyance. Each one of us has an appetite, but so many of us ignore our hunger and put our souls on diets. But what if you focused more on your hunger? What if you allowed hunger to be your guide, devoured what you craved, and focused on feeding your soul? I am hungry right now because I didn't eat today. I wanted to stand before you and feel that little ache in my stomach that I'd often felt as a child. When I was a child, there were several instances when I didn't have food to eat. My mother was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a disorder that often makes it difficult for one to distinguish between what is real and unreal. People with schizophrenia often have altered perceptions of reality. In my mother's case, there were several instances when she would actually forget that I existed. I would come home from school to an empty house and a locked door. It was during those times when I experienced extreme physical hunger. But after having been hungry so often, I learned to create a beautiful friendship with my hunger. I learned to hold on to its determined hand and allow it to guide me toward my truest desires. I learned to allow hunger to happen for me and not to me. Hunger became my alarm to eat, not only to nourish myself, but to feed my soul. I fed my soul by creatively thinking of ways to alleviate feelings of hunger during times when I didn't have any food. For instance, as a child, I often experienced hunger pangs. During my most memorable hunger pangs, I sat outside on the porch of our home. It was almost 1 a.m. I was too afraid to call anyone, so I simply sat there. My mouth was extremely dry, and I attempted to take my thoughts away from my dry mouth. I even tried to think of food to stop my hunger pangs. But the thing about hunger is that we have to actively satisfy our hunger. Thinking of a cheeseburger will not trick you into feeling full. At that moment, the only thing in my possession was my backpack. I opened my bag and retrieved my books. It was dark, so I had to anchor my books and catch light from the street lamps. I was so hungry. I narrowed my eyes and focused on the text. My stomach howled and whimpered as if acting out an entire National Geographic portrayal of predator meets prey as my body began to attack itself for nourishment, but I kept reading. The words fed me. I drank in noun, pronoun, and article. I nibbled on the verbs and I devoured the content. The ideas, the new knowledge, the stories, the feeling of learning and instructing as I taught myself fed me until I forgot to nourish myself. That's right. There was a period when my mother held on to a form of reality that included me long enough for me to neglect to place items on my soul's plate. The harmony of my environment provided me with a false sense of contentment. It's similar to the contentment many of us have when we place monetary pursuits above our deepest desires because we believe the money will make us happier. And I'm not saying that it couldn't, but I will say that your soul will ache to be fed again. And if you ever forget how to do so, all you have to do is look closely at your most difficult struggles. I believe that our life's purpose is deeply connected to our struggles. And if you uncover your struggles, and I mean really get knee deep in it and look around, that is where you will find your story. And your purpose is merely your story put into action. I was forced to face my struggles at 10 years old when approached by a journalist at the local library. I was a bit annoyed by his decision to interrupt my reading to ask me questions, but I decided to answer them nonetheless. I hear you're a pretty amazing little girl, he said. I wasn't sure if I could trust his smile. He was a stranger, and honestly, I was afraid to allow a stranger to uncover my secrets. You know, the librarian told me that you've read almost 100 books this summer. Why do you read so much? I grew tense. Could I tell him? Could I tell him that I learned of a reading program that provided free meals for every 10 books that I read? Could I tell him that I learned at an early age that educating myself would always keep me fed? I took a deep breath and I noticed the small writing pad that he kept in his hands. I looked him in the eye and said, "Books are my best friends." I didn't trust him, but I did trust myself. And now, after becoming aware of studies regarding animals conducted by the Max Planck Institute of Biology, I now understand how my hunger had driven me toward action. According to the studies, animal behavior is radically affected by the availability and amount of food. Hungrier animals tend to take more risks, and predators tend to hunt more dangerous prey when nearing starvation. I tapped into my hunger with fearless aggression. And the thing about tapping into your hunger is that you not only know what hunger feels like, but you also begin to know what it looks like. And I began to see hungry souls everywhere I went. I have had students walk 5 miles a day to study with me in Turkmenistan. I have taught homeless students on the streets of Bangkok and inspired young girls in Mongolia. I am an educator, and my secret sauce is simply a delicious focus on the learner. Cultivate your life in the same manner that you plan your meals. Live a delicious life. What are you hungry for? Go find it. And when you do, take a big bite out of it and keep going for more. Thank you. It's been an honor.